Muted.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's The Art of the Portfolio webinar brought to you by your Vanderbilt Alumni Association. I'm Drew Webb, Assistant Director of Student Alumni Engagement at Vanderbilt, and this webinar is just one of the resources of many that we provide to our alumni. So be sure to familiarize yourself with the additional services that we offer on our website, vuconnect.com, including several archived webinars on a range of career topics. Today's webinar will last around an hour. The presentation will run about 45 minutes with time allotted at the end for questions. Please feel free to type in questions as you have them into the question box on the side panel of your screen, and I will facilitate a Q&A at the end. And now I'm pleased to introduce today's presenter. Tiffany Franklin is an executive consultant and career coach with 18 years of experience, currently working as an associate director of career services at an Ivy League university. In her prior role, Tiffany served as a tech recruiter for an international creative staffing agency. She sourced candidates, conducted interviews, and submitted talent to hiring managers based in Silicon Valley, New York, Philadelphia, Austin, and Atlanta at Fortune 100 companies. In 2011, Tiffany launched a career consulting business and has helped over 300 clients, ranging from recent graduates to executives with 30 years of experience. Her clients are based around the globe and are from industries including consulting, finance, IT, engineering, healthcare, entertainment, communications, public affairs, education, and criminal justice. Tiffany spent 7 years as an assistant director at the Vanderbilt Center for Student Professional Development, working with engineering and arts, media, and communication students. During this time, she coordinated the Vandy in Hollywood program and Vandy on Madison Avenue internship programs. Tiffany earned her bachelor's degree from Vanderbilt with honors in psychology and a master's of education from the University of Pennsylvania with a concentration in counseling. Tiffany, we're excited to have you here today.
Thanks, Drew. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Take it away.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks, everybody, for coming out. Today, I want to go over the portfolio, and really when it comes down to it, a portfolio is a visualization of your success stories. And by the end of this session, I want you to have a solid representation of your past experience and be able to promote your brand as a professional. So let's jump in. First, some of the topics we're going to cover are the growing popularity of portfolios. It used to be they were pretty much the domain of graphic designers, artists, and architects, but nowadays really anyone can benefit from them. And we're going to go over specific steps of how to build this portfolio, from just conceiving it, what the strategy behind it is, to actually the nitty-gritty of the implementation. And then we want to talk about what makes a portfolio special. I used to be a recruiter at a staffing agency, and I would send out candidates for visual designer jobs and information architect roles and graphic designer to Fortune 100 companies. And in many cases, the hiring managers, they would look at the portfolio before they'd even look at the resume, because they wanted to see if the person had the aesthetic or the thought process that they were looking at, and they felt like the portfolio was the best way to do that. We're also going to talk about how does the portfolio fit into your overall brand and creating a strategic direction for that, because a portfolio really is your storefront. And then how do you use these in interviews, and of course time for questions. So throughout the presentation, I'm going to send some samples your way just to give you an idea of what are some that look good and why. This one I found, which I like that it's a very simple one, talks about, you know, what they have, the background in front-end design, UX design, content strategy, and then some of the things about what they bring to the table down below as far as problem solver. And it's just, I mean, there's no one right portfolio. It depends on the person, but this is an example of one that at least on the surface looks good. So what are these 7 steps that we're going to go over? The first is, why do you even need a portfolio? Before I jump into anything and really give it a lot of my time, I like to understand what is the purpose of it. We're going to talk about what goes into a portfolio, the nuts and bolts. I call that the hunter-gatherer phase. Which format is right for you? That depends on your field, the target job, and also your comfort level with, do you want something online or do you want the old paper version? We're going to talk about creating one, the logistics of if you're launching a website, even if you have no website experience, or doing the paper one or both. Best practices, of course, proofing it and getting it ready for distribution, and then actually publishing it and how to use it in the interview process. So step one, in today's competitive job market, it's not enough just to tell people that you've done things. You really have to demonstrate it. And that's why these visual depictions are so impactful. It goes back to the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And really, it's almost like a court case where this provides evidentiary support to employers that you can produce what they need. Because so much of interviews these days and the behavioral-based questions are all, tell me about a time when. And what they're looking for is the best predictor of future success is past success. So now you're just giving a visualization to that. As far as what goes into it, of course we've got your resume, which people link on there, and then your professional experience, which you may put in the terms of projects. That's proof of your accomplishments. And then also evidence of your skills. We've got projects, writing, public speaking. I just wrote a blog article on my website a few weeks ago about, do you have this essential interview skill? And what it is the ability to be able to tell employers about your experience in a way that resonates with them, and that's targeted to each job. And I tell people to go talk about their greatest hits, if you will, and that's in terms of skills, because it seems like across fields, being able to communicate well, work in teams, projects, writing, public speaking, a lot of these soft skills are critical in addition to some of the harder skills that go with each thing. So this portfolio gives you a way to demonstrate that. There's professional affiliations, licensure and certifications, work samples. Now be aware of restrictions with non-disclosure agreements. In the case where you sign something like that, what people have done is connect with their old employer, see exactly what are the boundaries, and then maybe they can talk in more generic terms about the project. Of course, it's not going to be quite as impactful, but at least it will keep you from any legal problems, but still show what you've done. And then references. Testimonials from clients are some of the best things to show what you've done. If you're at liberty to name those clients and they're Fortune 500 clients or really great startups, that's fantastic. And then on paper versions or physical portfolios, you can include contact info that actually has information like phone number and email, and then, of course, letters of recommendation. Of course, I wouldn't put that sensitive information out there for a digital one. And then for recent grads, you may want to include transcripts in those paper ones. Again, I wouldn't put that type of public information out there. That's up to you. So here's another sample. That one I showed you before, the front page, this is when you go one click in. And they chose to kind of make it look like an iPad, and each of those represents a different project. And then they start to go into, she talks about what she did with each of those projects. It's colorful, it's clean. So another good example. As far as what to put in there, I am always of the mindset of quality, not quantity. Some people do put everything but the kitchen sink, but really your portfolio is only as good as your weakest project. So I'd rather you have a few really stunning projects than dozens that are mediocre, because you want to take your best work. It's almost like that old newspaper thing, put everything above that's your best. Have that work come first. Use your best materials and things you're proud to work on. You want to showcase the type of work that you hope to be doing in the future. Eye-catching images. These are the things that really grab people. How can you best present each project? Do you have a picture along the way? And don't worry if you didn't think to take pictures along the way. You can just do that going forward. Another thing you can do is share the backstory. This is the way to bring your resume to life. So yesterday in my job, we had a company, Comcast, come out and talk to students about technical interviews and how to be successful. And it was interesting because I thought a lot of things translated to this. They were talking so much about getting into the thought process of the candidate, and in doing the problems and all, they wanted to see how did they approach it. And that's what you can do in a portfolio. Have the high-level click where they see the finished project on the front page. But then if you go in, you can break it down, show picture by picture what was your role, and then how did that evolve? So that way you're showing not only the finished project on the first page with title, image, and a little short paragraph to contextualize it, but then as they go in, they can see what some of your thought processes were along the way. It's almost like a movie trailer that will make them want to know more about you. And here's another sample that goes back into that where you can see she showed her wireframes. Now, again, you may not be in quite as technical a role or working on web pages, but you can still, even for mechanical engineers or maybe it's a PR person showing the different elements of the campaign they were working on, you can take little pictures along the way. Simplicity. When it comes down to it, we really want a straightforward website that's intuitive. I mean, you think about all the success of Apple, and really their products being intuitive are a cornerstone to their success. Let your content be the focus rather than a distracting design. So I can't help but think of the movie Legally Blonde, where she's like, my resume is pink and scented. Well, we remembered it for that, but not for the good reasons. So keep the purpose of the website pretty clear where people can find your work. Don't do anything too flashy or unconventional that can make it difficult to access or load, and just let your work really be the star. The fewest amount of sections necessary, pick one font, keep everything consistent, and just think about what will visualize your work most effectively. For the bio section, this is really, you get to show your personality and not just list past jobs. It's taking that resume and really letting them know the person behind it. You can share a point of view, what makes you unique. Of course, beware, wouldn't want to get into anything political or religious affiliations. That's not the place for that. But you can create an origin story. How did this passion develop? Let the details stand apart. So, can you talk about your notable clients, press that you were talked about in, publications, link to all your other social media accounts? You want to cross-pollinate. Although I wouldn't necessarily link to Facebook because, again, I try and keep that separate, but link to your LinkedIn. And if you are a coder and have stuff on GitHub, do that. Or you can go to your client site, different things if you're at liberty to do that. Be approachable. You can put a little personal trivia, hobbies, interests, but just don't get too much where, you're showing party pics or anything from last weekend. That's more Facebook. And for Facebook, remember to keep that locked down, because recruiters that I've talked to from multiple companies have confirmed that they do, in fact, Google people. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to show you some platforms that you can use to start a portfolio, especially if you have no experience doing websites. This one has a small cost attached. I looked, it was about $10. I'm sure if you get in, it could be more, but I really liked it as far as it was very stunning and visually simple, and it looked like one great option. But again, we'll talk about a range of them, and many have no cost attached. What are the distinctive elements that makes you and stands apart from other candidates? You want to talk about your awards, and also I just read about this in so many places. Make sure you have not only a contact form, but your contact information somewhere on every page of your portfolio. You want to make it easy as possible. If a recruiter or someone else is looking, a potential client wants to get in touch with you, you don't want them to have to go digging for this. And again, have all the Twitter. Now, I know I just said about Facebook, that depends. If you keep your Facebook locked and depending on your purposes, then maybe that could work. But again, anything, if you're linking to it, then make sure it's appropriate for a recruiter to see. Include your blog if it's professional. Make sure you update it frequently. And think about, are you adding some value to the thought community? In many cases, people will kind of just look at the discussion boards going on, and then later, as they feel more comfortable, start really contributing to these discussions. Keep it current. Google search loves when you have new content on there. So be sure to update your profile. That way it's not that hard to keep up with. You've got your latest projects on there, and you're editing as you go and just really maintaining that level of quality. Here's another sample of a client that I worked with. I really liked the way it was simple, but yet there was a lot of color to it, and it made me want to click on some of those and see, okay, what was it that he was doing? Now, if you actually do click on that, the little boy looking upward, you can see this was a software social media campaign he did, and he did a few different screenshots and then talked about what he did working on that. So which format is right for you? There's going to be pros and cons to each with a digital portfolio versus the paper, but really when it comes down to it, which are you most comfortable with and which will allow you to tell your story better and think about it for your field. So the pros and cons of digital portfolios. On the pro side, if you have to design a website, even if you're using one of those pre-made sites, it's still showing your technical skills and that you're not a technophobe. Include this URL in your resume and cover letter so employers can view it before the interview. In a way, it's one other pitch that's really powerful that may help you secure the interview rather than just bringing in the paper one once you already have the interview. And again, it's very easy to share. You can email it and just put it across so much of your brand and marketing collateral. The cons of it are if you're in an interview, you may not have availability to Wi-Fi. And it's always a little tricky with live sites. And sometimes the software is not compatible, or maybe that day the site is crashing. So just one thing to keep in mind, in case technical difficulties arise, you could always bring copies of some of the originals to distribute. The paper portfolio. It's very tangible. Employers can hold it in their hands. It's easy if they want to make copies. The biggest, I think, pro to it is you can include contact info for references and other items that are too personal to include online. And if there's no Wi-Fi on your site or if the site has trouble loading, then it's a good thing. The cons is it could appear dated, especially for jobs in the digital space, which these days so many jobs are kind of edging into that, even if it's not their primary domain. It can be expensive to print everything out, and it's a lot easier to make changes online, and also employers may want to keep a copy. Plus, they can be a little bulky, and you may need to do streamline for interview versions. Just see which one is best for you. Either can work. They're still demonstrating your skills. Now, here's a third sample. You'll notice, again, it looks a little like the other. It's colorful, but what you can see is they really bring about their passion, because that is, when I was recruiting, the things I wanted to know were, could the person do the job? Were they motivated to do the job? And would the team want to do the job with them? Was there a cultural fit? Cultural fit comes across more in the interviews, but I think ahead of time, the can you do the job? This really speaks to that as far as looking at what you've done in the past and what transferable skills you've gotten that would allow you to jump in and quickly contribute. And then also, are you motivated? Even a line as simple as that, I love what I do, that is powerful. And I think you don't even have to have a line like that, but just as you're writing about these projects, your passion will be conveyed. If you click further on this, this is another sample, and you see at the very bottom it says Art Direction and Web Design Web Campaign, and it shows both on the tablet and what on the phone and how it looks, and it's just a very simple but stunning. So what are the logistics of starting this website, or if it's assembling a physical one? So first you got to pick your platform, and there are so many possibilities out there. I'm going to show you some screenshots of many, so CoreFlat, Behance, other portfolio sites. Personally, right now, I'm using the blogging platform WordPress, and it's been a great tool for me. I'm probably going to completely revamp mine over the summer, but it's always, trying to reinvent and see what's the best thing for you. Now, if you are you're a designer, definitely do your own site, or if you just have that capability, because really it's the best piece of work. Your site is one of your portfolio, if you will, because it shows, your layout and functionality, what is the user experience you're giving that person. It's going to be one of your best advertisements. So here are a whole number of these sites, and let me go into them specifically. This is CoreFlat. When I was being a recruiter, a lot of people, especially young designers, have their work on here. I think it's super helpful to take a look at it. And one thing I like with these is look at the competition. Pretend you're a recruiter. What elements are standing out to you? And you can, take notes on best practices from the others you see out there and what parts can you emulate. And here we have got Behance, we have WordPress, Wix. Many are similar. They all sometimes have a little bit of a different, feel to them. So you can see which one's best for you and then do that. Now, one thing to keep in mind, when I was doing my own WordPress, there were some things that I was a little bit confused about. I would look at all the Google, how do you do this, and it was helpful. But one of the things I found really helpful was through work, I can get onto that lynda.com, those online courses. So I was able to do that, which was super helpful. They have all these video tutorials. So, and what's nice about it, they break them down into easily digestible, like 2 to 5 minute videos. So you don't have to watch an hour thing to help you with one thing. You can go directly to what you're looking for. When I worked at Vandy, they had this thing, Video Training Center. It was www.vtc.com, and I found that so helpful. It was just like lynda.com, but if you could, I think it was $30 a month, but you could do it just for 1 month and have unlimited access to all the videos. So if you're in that month where you're creating this and you're having some technical difficulties, that's one option. Another, you could go to a site like Upwork.com and you could outsource this. So if you want to, you have people bid on what you're looking for, and there's all kinds of designers that are all rated by past clients, so you can get a sense of what they've done. So if you really just don't want to deal with this, the only thing is I had stayed away from outsourcing in that regard because since continually updating is so important, I wanted to have that control, but it's what makes sense for you and your time constraints. Now regarding the home page, this is your storefront. So you want to make sure that it's visually appealing and organize your experience in a way that makes sense given your career goals. Are you a career changer that, maybe you're going from a consulting job and you're going to something like maybe PR? And so what can you take that you've done in the past and then, again, the transferable skills? Because so many times in our careers, people are changing all the time. They're not always going to do things directly related, but that's okay. And also, how do you summarize who you are and what employers will find in your site? And once again, the contact info. Experience to include. So especially if you're a younger grad, academic work and other projects from classes are fine. That's the way that you build up your skills. And create categories of examples to support the skills. So if it's HTML, show some of your HTML projects. If it's delivering presentations, say you're a teacher, then you can have, even stuff you've done in volunteer work. Say you're very active on a board or with a charity in town and you've coordinated a whole event. Well, maybe you want to go into event coordination. You can list that. And there are a lot of formats to illustrate these examples. Of course, web pages, if you've done a web page and it's still live, that's fantastic. But in some cases, companies are continually updating these. So maybe what was a brand new and dynamic web page you did 2 years ago is no longer there. In that case, try and get screenshots of what you did, and then you can put it in a PDF document. That's also showing you that any web pages you do today, get the screenshots now just in case it goes away. PowerPoints are effective, and of course, short digestible videos are always engaging. So when it comes down to it, you really want to make those first pieces count. Recruiters will spend 5 to 10 seconds per portfolio. And I know that sounds harsh, but I used to be recruiting for I was a contingency recruiter at an agency, and I would probably recruit for maybe 5 to 10 positions at any given time, post a job over a weekend, and have about 100 resumes. I posted on LinkedIn, the job board, and have 100 resumes come in. So the ones that showed me the portfolios, those are the ones that I wanted to look at first. And I would get a sense if they had the aesthetic that my client at the time was looking for. I liked it when they had their best and most relevant work up front. I didn't have to go searching for it. And it was great if they had customized it in a way, because think about it. It's not what you want to show. It's what the employer wants to see. You're targeting this to your audience, all the marketing 101 things. So how do you make your portfolio stand out? The clean layout, Really have attention to the design. Even if you're not a designer, the recruiter's not going to have a lot to base their judgment on. So just showing, instead of saying I have attention to detail, if they see that your typography, your details, your colors, your theme, everything is consistent, that'll show them how you organize things. Now, using PDFs. If you do use them, they're easy to customize each job to which you apply. Be sure they show off your skills. Just don't make them too long because they may not load, or if they don't read the documents, then it doesn't do any good. And make sure the samples are relevant and concise. Now, for paper portfolios, again, very similar in that the same elements as far as resume or cover letter, the first document, references, although you can put more personal information once you've checked with your references to have their contact info, any letters from past, testimonials. You could even print out some of your LinkedIn testimonials or referrals, samples of current work, academic honors. And then with professional development or your degrees, you could actually get a copy of your transcript or demonstrating your degree, your licenses, and also, any conferences attended or professional development sessions. Also, online courses. One thing I've noticed, a lot of places, people are applying to positions that are maybe technical, even though they haven't had a technical background, but they've just been interested in it. So they've taken a lot of online courses where they may not necessarily have a degree. So that's been helpful. On the activities and interest side, like I said, volunteer work definitely counts. Personal interests like hobbies like running, travel, cooking can make it a little interesting, your writing skills, and of course any languages. Now some basics are gather all your documents and keep them all in place. Use copies and keep the master of all the items. For the actual leather-bound portfolio, consider, the black, dark brown, navy, it just looks nicer. You can even do a little bit of a thin 3-ring binder. And I would use sheet protectors and index tabs to divide sections. Don't number the pages because you're probably going to want to make changes as far as which project you put first based upon each employer, so you don't have to go renumber those pages. Use professional paper, consistent headings, a table of contents that you will change, but it'll be helpful, and we talked about the numbers. Now, Vitamin T Staffing Agency, it was part of when I worked for Aquint, which was the international creative staffing firm. This was their kind of sister company that worked with younger designers. Where my side was the Fortune 500, this was more startups and mid-level design firms. And they have this fantastic blog that talks about portfolio tips for freelance designers. Now, even if you're not in the design or the tech space, I still feel like a lot of these tips will resonate. So if you go to considerations by field, and some of the best practices are big graphics, keep it focused, but go for the heart. You want to make this personal and tell your story and do the quality assurance. So other tips are talk about what inspires you, what projects are exciting. That's how they can show, do they want to have you on the team? Is this somebody that's going to be passionate? Make it responsive. So many recruiters now are looking at stuff on their phones. So you want to make sure whether they look at the site on their desktop, laptop, tablet, or phone, that it's not going to lose anything. Choose your best work and update it, and of course keep that contact info out there. Now, some other best practices are have a great headshot. It really will show your style and identity, and originality goes a long way. But not so original, so think about your audience. If you're, a banker or in a very conservative field, then you can have the picture in the suit that looks like your LinkedIn picture. If you're more artistic, then, you can have more of a fun background, but just think about how does it align with your particular industry. Loading speeds do matter. If it takes more than 3 seconds for content to load, somebody may move on. So think about that when you're choosing a hosting package, that you'll have fast load speeds, and keep those videos short and engaging so that people will want to be on your site longer. Fresh content, like I said, the way to improve your search rankings is to keep updating it and keep posts relevant. And again, make this clear what you can do and a vehicle for showing your skills and professionalism. And what is the language of your particular industry? Make sure that you have that message consistent with your brand. So include past clients who can really show that track record of your success. So if you've worked with some Fortune 500 ones and they're or well-known startups and they said that you could mention them, by all means do so. Put their little logo if they're okay with it. Direct quotes from clients really do act as reviews these days, and testimonials, it just gives people an element of trust. And those link to existing pieces of work, but just make sure that the clients are still using them. Teaching portfolios. Vanderbilt has an excellent site that will really walk you by this step by step. So take a look at that if you're in the teaching field. Some elements for that are that statement of teaching philosophy, 1 to 2 pages. If you have evaluations from supervisors, students, awards, video of you actually teaching or relevant photographs, some lesson plans, and really what technology have you implemented? And like the resume, can you show, quantify to demonstrate your success? What are some of your tangible outcomes that you've had? So for people in the arts, work samples or photos of these, video, audio recordings, and what skills have you mastered, and what are some of the descriptions of these classes? Here's one that this is the secondary click, but this is a client I had, and the recruiters or the hiring managers just loved her. I know it seems very simplistic, but what I like on here, she showed the responsiveness there, going from the Urban Outfitters site, the desktop, to the tablet, to the phone, and then really talked about what she did. And even though it's very simple, it's impactful. As far as proofreading, now you're ready to get it out to the world. So have a few friends look at it, because sometimes, I don't know about you, but my brain will autocorrect things. Make it easy to update. Does it pass the professionalism test? But then ask the people that you have look at it. If they had to sum up in 3 or 4 words, what value do you bring? What is your expertise? Can they look at your portfolio in a few seconds and get that? And if they can't, then ask yourself, what do I need to change to make sure that I'm conveying this expertise? And just make sure it's intuitive. I want you to be able to give a guided tour to it, but that it's not required. So you can talk about it to people in 20-second increments over a minute or two, but yet if somebody wanders upon it on their own, they're not going to be confused. Branding yourself. So make sure that your portfolio link is on the resume, cover letter, LinkedIn page, social media profiles, and just leverage it in all areas. You want to have this consistent brand of who you are. Now, publishing it. For digital portfolios, I bring an iPad or tablet to the interview. Have it on the cellular mode if you have it, and then have your site all loaded and ready to go. That way you can have your nice little tablet or your leather-bound portfolio. And when I say portfolio, I don't necessarily mean portfolio in this sense. I just mean the tablet and then the little bind, or not a binder, but where you can slide in your resume. And then you can have your iPad. If you do that, though, be sure the volume is turned off, because sometimes with the cloud, it'll start showing your text. So you don't want that to be another thing to be distracting. And again, with phones, be careful. I like to even turn my phone off during interviews, because I have found when I've done mock interviews with people, sometimes their vibrate function is very loud, even in their bag, and it throws them off their game. Practice giving a tour and adapting to time limits. I was starting to talk about that before. So they may give you some time at the end of the interview to really say, well, share about this. So if you had to go in there, then you could show them quickly what you were doing, but then if they asked more questions, you could adapt and give the longer version. Really take cues. Do they seem like they want to know more? Are they asking follow-up questions, or are they just looking at it for a few minutes, and then you can leave them with the link to digest later? With the paper version, you can select the items most relevant. So you don't have to bring the whole big thing. In fact, you may not want to. In some ways, people will do a streamlined version that they bring to the interview, but then they can leave with them. So it's not your originals by any way, and it just has what are the main things for that particular employer. And you can modify that for each interview. Final thoughts. Like I said, get a second opinion. You always want to make sure, little spelling mistakes and all, they may seem minor, but they go a long way as far as your attention to detail. And check out the competition. See what they're doing, and not to be intimidated, but just to get some ideas of best practices. One thing which I realize is not an issue for anybody, but I just think it's always important to talk about is never include a designer sample that's not yours. Be careful about showing proprietary samples. You don't want to get in trouble. It's not worth it that way. And use labels. Really clearly show what your role was. You know, were you part of the implementation and the strategy? Was it design, production, client pitch? And talk about all the teams you worked on to produce the piece of the product. And also software. That's really important. You know, a lot of people on their sites will show their different levels of software and what their levels of expertise. I found that really helpful. Now, here are some sources that I use to put this together. So these are great articles to go check out. And then if you are interested, I'd love to have you email me and just to ask to be opt-in to my monthly newsletter. I'm going to have a lot of career advice and resources beyond my website. And over the summer, as I do the website redesign, and I'm even thinking of doing podcasts. So lots of free stuff out there, and hopefully will be helpful for you in your search. Here are, you know, a list of the services that I offer, from resumes, cover letters, mock interviews, strategy sessions, salary negotiation, and just email me too with your suggestions of topics you'd like to see on my weekly blog. I'll be happy to write about it. So again, thank you so much, Drew, for having me, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Okay, great. We do have a few questions that came in. So first off, someone asked, where are people primarily posting portfolios? Is it only on LinkedIn, or, you know, how are they getting those out there?
They put them definitely on LinkedIn, but I see it mainly on, you know, their resume that they put it. They put it on the cover letter, and then, you know, they may do business cards and talk about it. They put it on their Twitter, have it linked. So within each of their, it's weird because in a lot of ways what I'll do is on Facebook I'll even mention my portfolio, but I won't necessarily mention Facebook on the portfolio itself. So I kind of have that in one direction. But the Twitter goes back and forth, and when I look at my website, you can use the statistics for your site, which is really helpful too as you go back and think, what do I need to change? How is this resonating with people? And see, okay, which articles are generating the most traffic? And if I see something that's generating a lot of traffic, then I think, oh, that's something, what can I do to make other areas of my site like that more?
Great. Do you have any examples of non-creative design or user experience professionals who have successfully used portfolios?
Yes, I all the time in my job, I have students that are mechanical engineers, so they have very tangible, they're building robots or something like that, and they'll put different pictures of the project or them, you know, what it looked like as they went along the way. And then I have some friends that are in the PR field, so what they'll do is they'll put samples of their press releases. They may do a video of the event, invitations that they've done, a picture of that, and so that's how they do that.
Great. Okay, and another question we had come in was asking about tips on a color scheme and how many pages you would recommend in a portfolio.
Okay, so color schemes, I think just keep it simple, but also that's where your personality comes in. So I don't think any one particular color scheme works. Just see what resonates to you, because, again, I want this to be something that really reflects your personality. That being said, try not to wear too many crazy colors where it's distracting, and that's where I think almost have like a focus group. Have, you know, maybe 10 different people look at it, get some opinions, but again, if you show it to 10 different people, you could get 10 different opinions, but look for patterns. Is there something that people are saying are distracting in your site, or are they getting the point of what you're doing? As far as now what was the other question, Drew?
Number of pages.
Number of pages. Okay. I think as far as, you know, have that front page, and then maybe have a few different headings where I don't feel like people should have to do 10 different clicks, but I think you can have categories on your front page with the different projects you have, so maybe not more than about 10 different pages, but remember the one you spend the most time is going to be that first page, and then have the contact there. But of course, anything that's out there is fair game, and an employer could judge you on.
Okay, and another question. You mentioned customizing the portfolio for a particular position or interview. Would you recommend doing this for a digital portfolio as well, or only for the hard copy version?
It's easiest to do it for the hard copy version. I think it depends how much you want the job. And also, are you applying to 10 different things? Because that can get a little tricky for people that are applying to 3 different fields. So their digital portfolio may start to feel a little bit more generic, but yet they kind of need it to appeal to all of those. Or you could even do it where just use your portfolio for 1 or 2 of the jobs and don't mention it to the other job where it's not as relevant. You know, see how it works. I'm always, throughout the job search, I'm always about experimenting and basically seeing if the resume that gets you the interview, or in this case it could be the resume and digital portfolio, the interview that gets you the job. So I always look at, you know, am I getting interviews? Okay, then the resume is doing its job. Am I not getting offers from the interviews? Maybe I need to do a mock interview. So with that, you know, just keep playing around and see how your results are, and maybe you need to go adjust as you go.
Okay, and the next 2 questions that came in are kind of similar. One person asked, how about a portfolio in banking or sales? Very difficult to show visuals in those businesses. And another person asked, you mentioned not referencing politics, but this person works in government and campaigns, and have you seen political operatives successfully use a portfolio?
Okay, let's see. As far as for people in banking or sales, what I think you could do is, if you're at liberty to disclose some of the numbers of your success, then maybe what you could do is put visuals, maybe, you know, do some infographics about what your success has been, you know, how you have, or, you know, what kind of, how big the accounts have been that you're working at. If you're at liberty to discuss who some of the big name clients are, you could maybe put logos if they're okay with that, but again, get permission before you do that. So that's one way to demonstrate that. Or you could even show maybe screenshots from the company as far as if there was an interview about their success or what they've done. It doesn't just have to be pictures of a project. It can be clippings from media. It can be, you know, where you retweeted or something. You can talk about that. And then when you were, and the second question for that, sir?
Yeah, it was about being a political operative and...
Oh, political, okay.
Yes.
For that, I haven't personally had a political client who used a portfolio. I've had political clients for other things, but I can see now that, of course, would be an exception where if you are in that field, then definitely that's your bread and butter. Talk about it because that's part of your brand and who you are. I think it could be, I would just be careful that you know, talk to the agency with what you're working with, make sure, you know, what you put out there, because sometimes that can be a little sensitive, but it could be a great way of branding. And, you know, if you want to email me a specific question about that, I'll be happy to talk offline.
Okay, and the last one was just asking about the availability of the webinar after today's presentation. And just to let you know, we will be sending out a link to a YouTube where we'll upload the video. So that will definitely be available to you, so you can look at those articles and the whole presentation further. And with that, I think that wraps up our Q&A. So Tiffany, thank you again for sharing your expertise with us today. And thank you to all of you for participating. I encourage all of you to explore the coaching offerings that Tiffany provides, as well as some of our other partners at vuconnect.com/career-coaching if you need some extra one-on-one guidance. And of course, you can also interact with alumni through our official Vanderbilt Alumni LinkedIn group, and on VU Connect, where more than 6,000 alumni career advisors have offered to be contacted for job and industry advice. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks in advance for your feedback when I send a brief survey later today. We love hearing how we can continue to support you through life after Vanderbilt, and wish you the very best as you consider your next steps professionally and personally. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.